My name is Bobby, and through a warp in time, I have traveled to the future, to the year 1995, where there are horrors unlike I have ever seen, and the faces I knew no longer look familiar.
Julia, do you think there's been some disturbance in the time warp? And we've come back to another time? Our own time, but some time in the future. I don't know. Barnabas, I'm frightened. I feel like a child who's lost and I'll never find my way home. It's being silly. We've got to find out what all this means. Julia, a new grave freshly dug. Read what it says there. Henry Beecham, 1967 to 1995. 1995? Come on, Barney, we're going back to the future! With the 1995 storyline on Dark Shadows, which are episodes 1061 to 1070 and DVD volumes 21 to 22. When I first started watching Dark Shadows, the thing that I was most excited to see was when Barnabas goes to the future. It seemed like it would be so different from everything else in the series. When I finally got to watch it, I found that indeed it was different from everything else, but in ways I never expected. It was July of 1970, and the ratings weren't what they used to be. The parallel time storyline had at least stabilized them, but things could still go either way. And now that was quickly wrapping up, and it was once again time to move on. Dan Curtis and the writers knew that the audience loved the time travel stories, like when they went back to 1795 or to 1897. And the parallel time storyline was a variation of that, but instead of going back in time like they always did, they went to the side. So they decided to try another variation of time travel and go to the future. Because creator-producer Dan Curtis was never especially interested in going to the future, and because the budget was only $70,000 a week, and that's for 5 shows a week, they really couldn't do a future of flying cars or anything like that. So instead of Barnabas and Julia finding a futuristic Collinwood, they would find a Collinwood in ruin.
On the show, this was done by Gerard Stiles, but in real life, the man responsible for destroying Collinwood was scenic designer Cy Tomashoff. Cy had been on the show since the beginning, and had designed the sets to evoke an air of mystery. Even the little things, like the grandfather clock, helped create this mood. Now Cy had to destroy these sets, so that Collinwood looked like a disaster, but he couldn't do too much because after 2 weeks everything had to go back to normal. So he decided to layer all the things that would suggest damage, like beams and chunks of plaster, on top of the permanent structures, along with doing a few quick fixes, like taking the doors off their hinges and changing out the windows and drapes for broken ones.
The paint and the carpenter shops were given a couple weeks' notice to prepare the materials. And after Friday's Dark Shadows episode was filmed, which was around 4 in the afternoon, Cy Tomashoff and the crew, who had already been working all week on the series, went to work destroying Collinwood. By midnight, they were exhausted and went home. But on Monday's taping, Barnabas, Julia, and the rest were now in the strange and horrifying world of 1995.
After leaving parallel time through Angelique's room, Barnabas and Julia find themselves in the future, in the year 1995, where Collinwood is in ruin. David is dead, Elizabeth and Roger are missing, and Carolyn and Quentin have both lost their minds. Barnabas and Julia try to find out what happened, but no one will tell them. In fact, people become terrified and distant by the very word Collins. But with good reason. Collinwood is inhabited by the very incarnation of evil, the ghost of Gerard. There is also the ghost, Daphne, and the ghosts of 2 children, Carrie and Tad, although the boy appears to be David. After they gather enough clues, Barnabas and Julia plan on returning to 1970 to prevent the disaster. But Julia goes under the evil spell of Gerard.
What makes the 1995 storyline so gripping is how haunting the atmosphere is. You said it. Despite all the witches, werewolves, and royal dinners, the great house of Collinwood has always stood tall. But now it's in total ruin, and the characters that gave it life, like Roger and Elizabeth and Maggie, are all gone, and it feels so empty. They do a nice slow reveal so we can take it all in. Visually, it's incredibly eerie, because this house is in such a shocking condition. But it's also eerie, because just like Barnabas and Julia, we're trying to imagine what happened. And nothing is scarier than our own imaginations. What could have happened? Where is everyone? It's as if the house was simply abandoned. It's so still and as quiet as a grave. Barnabas, look! I left these papers here the night I went into parallel time. It looks like somebody I very touched. Could it be some form of radiation? It could be. Oh, look! We must leave Collinwood before the day is out. It's in Elizabeth's handwriting.
After we see Collinwood, we meet our old Dark Shadows friends, the ones that have survived. Carolyn and Quentin have both gone insane, and Mrs. Johnson and Professor Stokes, while still sane, have been emotionally scarred from what happened. We've known these characters for years, and it's heartbreaking to see them like this. And then, of course, we meet Gerard, who with his expression of arrogance in the decaying setting, absolutely has an aura of evil.
This storyline lasted 2 weeks, so 10 episodes. And while that may seem disappointingly short, it's actually perfect. Because in 10 episodes, they're able to give us just enough information where our imaginations could really go to town. But we never learn anything specific. For example, we know that Gerard is evil incarnate. We don't really know why. So they're able to maintain this aura of haunting mystery throughout the entire storyline. And it's what we don't see and what we don't know that makes it so spooky. Because the characters are facing horrors unlike they've ever seen before, the actors are also able to go deeper than ever before with their characters.
The storyline is centered and is perfectly structured around my favorite pair, Barnabas Collins and Dr. Julia Hoffman, played by Jonathan Frid and Grayson Hall. The storyline begins after Barnabas and Julia have escaped parallel time, and Barnabas is saddened by the loss of his beloved Roxanne, while Julia is saddened because the one she loves, Barnabas, will never love her.
I must find my Roxanne again. She's the only woman that made me forget my dear lost Josette. I thought there was hope, that I could live a life of love and tenderness with her. We forget how rare a life of love could be. You're not the only one who's had so little hope. We can get used to anything, if we have to. For as long as I live, I will despise this room for what it has done to me. Julia has been batty over Barnabas since the beginning, and now she's at a point where she loves him, will never leave him, but has lost all hope of him ever loving her. And Barnabas, who does care about her as a friend, either doesn't see it or doesn't care how she feels. Then Julia goes under the power of Gerard and is torn between wanting to protect Barnabas and wanting to destroy him. I love Grayson here because you believe the conflict, but she's also such a theatrical and campy actress that it's fun to watch her be evil. Then, when she's in control of herself, she tells Barnabas to leave without her and is willing to sacrifice herself for him. But Barnabas is also willing to sacrifice himself for her. You can escape. Not without you. You can't take me with you. Never without you. In the beginning, Barnabas treats her like an old glove. But through almost losing her, Barnabas realizes and tells her how much he cares about her. So even though they never say the word, 1995 acts as their love story. While Barnabas and Julia's relationship develops, it is Nancy Barrett as Carolyn Stoddard, or as she now calls herself, Carolyn Fredericks, who steals every scene she's in.
Nancy Barrett, is one of the most talented actresses on Dark Shadows, and played everything from the rebellious Carolyn Stoddard of the 60s to the showgirl Pansy Faye. But because these are supporting characters, she can be easy to overlook. As Professor Stokes stated, Carolyn is the only one who knows what happened the night that Collinwood was destroyed. She was found cowering in the tower room. In 1995, somewhere in her mind, she still knows what happened, and is involved with the ghosts Carrie and Tad. But because the truth is so horrible, she's retreated into insanity.
Carolyn, where are the others? Elizabeth, Roger. They will come back soon. Carolyn, we have seen David's grave. Sometimes she's half in touch with reality and half not. Kind of like me. Is trying to stop Barnabas and Julia from finding out the truth. Other times, she's like a child, waiting for Uncle Roger to come home and having Mrs. Johnson brush her hair. And then other times, she barely remembers who she is. But towards the end, through a little help from Barnabas, she tries to be the Carolyn she used to be, and tries to save her family. I've got to remember them. I don't want to lose them again. That's Mother, yes, and that's Uncle Roger. Oh, yes. But who is that? I don't remember. Who is it? Carolyn, that's a girl, a young woman who had courage and spirit, who cared more for her family than anything. Carolyn, I tell you, it's you. It's you. Yes, I remember. It's me. It's me. She's creepy, she's kooky, she's altogether ooky, but also tragic. So even though you're loving how crazy she is, your heart is also going out to her. Along with the characters, the look and feel of 1995 also make it distinct. There's nothing quite like the 1995 storyline. I've already mentioned the main setting, Collinwood, is in total ruin, which gives it a different kind of ambiance than anything else we've seen in the series.
There are also 3 great old age makeups. Mrs. Johnson looks old and tired. Carolyn looks similar to how Nancy Barrett looked in the 90s, but much more run down and mentally disturbed. And then there's Professor Stokes. Now, some have criticized that Stokes looks too old. The actor Thayer David was only in his 40s in 1970, but I like it because it suggests that his failed exorcism caused damage to his health, making him age badly. There's also a new room at Collinwood, the Playroom, and new music to go with it.
Even though it's only 10 episodes, it just seems like the scenic designer, the makeup man, the music man, and the actors just passionately embraced it and made it unforgettable.
The last year of the series had some of its weakest storylines, but 1995 is the highlight of that year. After the 1840 parallel time storyline finished up, the writers had planned to finally develop the Barnabas and Julia relationship into a romance, but the series was cancelled, so it was never to be. However, after the series, Dark Shadows writer and Grayson Hall's husband, Sam Hall, wrote an article for TV Guide called Here's What Really Happened to Barnabas and Company, where he described the fate of the Dark Shadows characters, and stated that when Julia was deathly sick, Barnabas realized just how much he loved her, and after she was well, the two were married.
For me, some of the later episodes of Dark Shadows are more forgettable than the earlier ones, but not 1995. At its best, the sky was the limit on Dark Shadows, and this storyline is incredibly creative, genuinely spooky. It has one of the most meaningful romances and some of the most powerful tragedy in the series. So I give it 4 insane people out of 4. Thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, and have a crazy day!